You're fired. I'll handle the rest. What? Stephen, the department head, laughed out loud as he went on. I already called Axis Logic. I told them I'm going instead. What did you say? No one told me about this. This was clearly Stephen's unilateral decision. If he's already spoken to the client, then there's nothing I can do. As I stood there, bewildered, Stephen handed me a resignation letter with a satisfied grin. I'm handling the negotiations. You're just in the way. So, you know what that means, right? This is insane. Basically, he was telling me to resign so I couldn't interfere. Until now, I'd endured all of Stephen's sarcasm and spite. And with Stephen, my anger finally exploded completely and without restraint. Fine, then I'll leave the negotiations to you. Wow, that was easier than I thought. Well, works for me. Stephen grinned smugly. He probably never imagined I might still have a card to play. My name is Thomas, and I'm 42 years old. I used to work at a company called Alto where we developed AI technology. The company mainly focuses on B2B solutions and operates across a wide range of sectors. Lately, we've been gaining attention in the industry for developing specialized AI processing chips. Most advanced AI chips are developed overseas, and very few companies in Japan focus on AI development. As a result, companies often approach Alto Networks hoping to use our technology or start joint research projects. Alto Networks is one of the rare companies developing AI in Japan, and expectations for us are high. In this company, I worked as a sales manager in the AI division. My wife and children have been supporting me as I poured myself into my work at this rapidly growing company. Right now, Alto Networks is facing a critical moment. A major negotiation has come up regarding our AI chips. A large company called Axis Logic is looking to buy our network AI chips. Axis Logic develops a wide range of systems, including transportation and robotics. AI technology is rapidly advancing in these fields, and they need a huge number of AI chips to keep up. They are reportedly willing to pay $7.8 billion. They want us to deliver chips long-term as their partner with that amount. It would be the largest contract in Alto Networks' history. It could be a truly massive deal. As a member of the sales team, I felt the weight of responsibility. Then, something even more surprising happened. I want you to handle the negotiations with Axis Logic. Me, sir? To my surprise, Mr. Kennedy of Alto Networks chose me to lead the deal. I discussed it thoroughly with the executive director, Mr. Thompson, and the board. Based on your sales record, reliability, and dedication, we all agreed there's no better person for the job. Will you accept it? I remember seeing the executives holed up in a meeting room for hours the other day. Apparently, they were deciding who would take the lead on this deal. Being chosen like this was truly an honor. I had the top performance in the sales division, so if that was the reason, it made sense. Also, I had a certain connection with Axis Logic that they might be counting on. Still, I couldn't help but question the decision. I'm honored, but are you sure I'm the right person? I mean, surely there were others more qualified. Like Stephen, for example. I felt uneasy taking on a deal this big over someone in a higher position. But Mr. Kennedy gave me a warm smile and said, "We discussed it thoroughly and agreed you're the best person for the job. This is a consensus we all reached after careful consideration. I won't force you, but I truly hope you'll accept." All right, I understand. Although I was unsure, I nodded. Part of me still hesitated, wondering if I was really the right choice, but this was the biggest deal we'd ever had. If I could be the one to handle it, I couldn't ask for a greater honor. Feeling the weight of the task on my shoulders, I accepted the responsibility. Mr. Kennedy walked away. Once he was out of sight, I let out a deep sigh. I don't treat some negotiations as more important than others, but this time I really couldn't afford to make a mistake. As I started thinking about what to do next, someone approached me. "A massive deal, huh? Must be nice being the guy the higher-ups like." Stephen. It was Stephen. He may have secretly overheard what happened earlier. Look at you. You are just a manager, and they hand you this huge contract. You must be thrilled. That's not how I see it. Then why the long face? I don't like it. Whatever expression I had, he would have hated it anyway. He's been with the company since graduating, so he has many years of service. And in the past, his impressive sales performance earned him a promotion to department head. But lately, his results have been poor. Maybe that's why he's been increasingly harsh with his subordinates. While he's been slipping, my sales performance has only improved over the years. He must hate that. If you pull this off, you'll be next in line for department head. Threatening my position must feel pretty good. Deep down, I bet you think I'm a joke. I don't think that at all. Yeah, right. Makes me sick. If things keep going the way they are, I'll eventually become the next department head. That only adds fuel to his resentment. The $7.8 billion deal was always going to be between Stephen and me. But in the end, Mr. Kennedy and the others chose me, not him. That must have been a bitter, humiliating blow. Do your best. I'm sure the next department head won't need any help from me. Understood. Spitting his words, full of resentment, Stephen walked off. There's no point in clashing within the same sales team. But if I said we should all work together to make this deal a success, he'd probably call me arrogant. It was clear that not involving Stephen in the $7.8 billion negotiation would be the wisest choice. With that in mind, I began preparing for the deal. From that day on, I dedicated myself to ensuring its success. I anticipated questions from the client and created the documents needed for the presentation. I also researched Axis logic thoroughly, considering how our AI chips could contribute to their operations. I didn't let myself become overconfident just because they had shown interest in our technology. It's these small, steady efforts that lead to successful negotiations. Thinking about the weight of handling a $7.8 billion deal was overwhelming. But I reminded myself that Mr. Kennedy and the others entrusted me with this because they believed in me. I had to live up to their expectations. With that resolve, I poured myself into my work every day. Meanwhile, Stephen's hostility only grew stronger by the day. Hey, you're keeping up with the prep, right? Don't go running off with your tail between your legs now. Must be nice being the favorite, getting the good deals handed to you. At the office, he would glare at me and try to throw me off. Of course, he offered no help with the negotiation. It was as if he was praying for me to fail. But I didn't let his pressure get to me, and I kept preparing. I consulted with Mr. Kennedy and gathered as much information about the client as I could. I even asked Mr. Thompson to role-play the negotiation with me, so I wouldn't miss a single chance. A few days before the meeting, Mr. Kennedy came to my desk and said, "Looks like things are coming along well." "Yes, sir. I can see how hard you've been working on this. I have full confidence in you." He nodded with satisfaction. Knowing that he recognized my efforts made me happy. "If this negotiation is a success, your promotion is practically guaranteed. I'm counting on you." "Really?" "Of course. You'll be closing the largest deal in our company's history, so it only makes sense." Thinking of Stephen made it hard to celebrate openly. But knowing that Mr. Kennedy held me in such high regard was something to be proud of. I swallowed hard and renewed my determination to succeed. And then, the day before the big meeting finally arrived. I had done everything I could to prepare. No matter what questions they asked, I was confident I could answer them. I was sure I had a presentation that would capture their interest. With that in mind, I began my final review. But just as I was working at my desk, I heard an unexpected voice. "Hey, Thomas." "Stephen, what's going on?" Stephen, who had been oddly quiet the last few days, approached me. I had a bad feeling, and then he gave me a sly grin and said, "You're fired. I'm handling the negotiation from here." "What?" His words were so shocking that my eyes widened. As I stood there speechless, Stephen continued laughing. "I already called Axis Logic. I told him I'll be the one going." What? I haven't heard anything about that. Neither Mr. Kennedy nor Thompson had mentioned anything of the sort. This was clearly Stephen acting on his own. At this point, everything I had prepared was completely thrown into disarray. If the client had already heard from him, there was no way to backtrack now. Contacting them to say the representative had changed again would only breed mistrust. As I stood there in disbelief, Stephen happily handed me a document. Here, your resignation letter. A resignation letter? Still trying to understand his intentions, I watched as he placed the paper on my desk. The title clearly read Letter of Resignation. With a smug grin, Stephen said, I'm handling the deal. You're in the way. You know what that means, right? This is ridiculous. In other words, he was forcing me to resign so I couldn't interfere. He wasn't going to let me go until I submitted that letter. I never imagined I'd be sabotaged like this right before the negotiation. I had always endured Stephen's snide remarks until now. A part of me always wondered, weren't we supposed to be working together? Instead, he saw me as a rival and now was sabotaging the deal out of spite. That was the final straw. I couldn't hold back my anger anymore. Fine. Then I'll leave the negotiations in your capable hands. Wow, that was easier than I thought. Makes my life easier. I'm sure you'll handle it far more smoothly than I ever could. Now you're getting it. Stephen gave a smug smile. He did outrank me, after all. He was certain he was the better man. He probably never imagined I still had options left. I felt sorry for Mr. Kennedy, but this was all Stephen's doing. I calmly wrote my resignation letter and handed it to him. Well then, I'll be on my way. Yeah, good luck out there. But that kind of arrogance never ends well. If this was how he wanted to play it, I was ready to respond. After clearing out my personal belongings, I left Alto Networks. The next day, I was sitting in a room at another company. While going through some formalities, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. At first, I thought it would stop, but the calls just kept coming. A glance at the screen showed that it was Stephen trying to reach me. Noticing my concern, the person in front of me spoke. If it's bothering you, feel free to answer it. Thank you. It sounds like he's in quite a panic, so I'll take you up on that. I stood up and stepped away from the table to answer the call. As soon as I picked up, Stephen launched into a frantic tirade, skipping any greeting. Thomas, where did you put the documents for the Axis Logic meeting? His voice was desperate. I figured he had every reason to panic, and I calmly replied, well, I've already resigned from Alto Networks, so I shredded every document I created for the negotiation. What? After submitting my resignation yesterday, I had cleaned out all my belongings. That included the documents I had prepared for the meeting with Axis Logic, and they were all destroyed. I shredded everything thoroughly and with care. Of course, I also deleted all the negotiation data from my computer. There's no way to recover it now. You've got to be kidding me. How am I supposed to handle the negotiation without those documents? Well, you're the one going now, right? Then my documents shouldn't matter. I assume you've prepared your own materials, haven't you? I knew the truth. Stephen had been busy with other tasks and hadn't prepared anything at all for the negotiation with Axis Logic. He planned to bring my work and steal the results for himself. He probably intended to tell Mr. Kennedy that I suddenly fell ill. Something like being overwhelmed by pressure and unable to leave the house, an excuse that would sound believable enough. Damn it, you. In any case, I'm no longer part of your company. And if I was just in your way, then I'll leave things to you now. Hey, Thomas. Wait. He was desperate and about to attend a $7.8 billion negotiation without any documents. But why should I, after all his harassment, feel obliged to help him? Ignoring Stephen as he panicked over how to get the documents, I hung up the phone. You seem to be dealing with quite a bit. When I returned to the table, the man in front of me spoke up. Right. Sorry to keep you waiting. No need to apologize. I'm just glad you came here. His smile eased my tension. As for who this man was, I'll reveal that shortly. I gathered most of what that call was about. In that case, how about this? He made a suggestion. I wondered if it was really okay to go through with something like that, but it was his suggestion after all. And part of me wanted to do it. So I accepted and took action. When the time came for the meeting, Stephen arrived at Axis Logic. Since the change of representative had already been communicated, he wasn't stopped at the entrance. As planned, he was led to the conference room. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. Stephen entered the room looking pale. He must have tried to put together something after I hung up. But under time pressure, the documents were no doubt incomplete. He knew there was no way he could secure a $7.8 billion deal with such half-baked materials. But when Stephen stepped into the conference room, he was stunned by something completely unexpected. Why are you here, Thomas? Good to see you, Stephen. Yes, the $7.8 billion deal was about to begin. And seated across from him as Axis Logic's representative was I. Why would someone who worked at Alto Networks just yesterday be sitting here now? For Stephen, this was beyond imagination. You worked at Alto Networks until yesterday. Actually, I've had a personal connection with Mr. Nelson, the president of Axis Logic, for a while now. What? He's been trying to recruit me for some time. I kept turning him down because I liked working at Alto Networks. As a salesperson, I often attended industry events and networking functions, building many relationships. My sales skills were well known across the industry. Because of that, every time I interacted with executives from other companies, they would ask if I'd consider working for them. Mr. Nelson of Axis Logic had personally scouted me under similar circumstances. But until now, I had been fully satisfied with my work at Alto Networks. So I generally turned down those offers, though Mr. Nelson remained particularly interested in me and continued reaching out. That's why, upon resigning, I finally accepted his offer. Maybe that's why Mr. Kennedy had chosen me in the first place, because he knew of this connection. So, I've accepted a position at Axis Logic. The reason I'm here today, participating in this $7.8 billion negotiation, is thanks to Mr. Nelson's generosity. He told me, go ahead and see what kind of face Stephen makes when he walks in. Stephen turned bright red. He hated being treated like a spectacle. He probably had a lot he wanted to shout, but it seemed he decided to focus on closing the deal. Then you're going to sign this contract, right? Trying to compose himself, he forced out the words. Maybe he was even relieved, thinking I would make things easier. But he shouldn't be so optimistic. You forced me to resign yesterday. Did you forget that? Stephen was at a loss for words. What he did yesterday. If he truly understood that, he would know better than to say anything careless. I just thought you were under too much pressure. I was worried. He kept trying to justify himself. Did he really think I would buy that? If you were really worried, shouldn't you have said something before switching out the lead on the deal? Ugh. The reason he took the negotiation away from me was obvious. He couldn't stand that I was favored by upper management and entrusted with the biggest deal in the company's history. Someone like him would never genuinely be concerned about me. I did everything I could to make this negotiation a success. I discussed it with Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Thompson, and I prepared thoroughly. I remembered every effort I had made up to today. And yet, not only did you try to take over at the last minute, you even forced me to resign. Do you really think that's acceptable? However, all the hard work I had built up was suddenly trampled by Stephen. With all the time and heart I had put in, I couldn't possibly forgive it. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Thompson, and my colleagues had supported me, but I had my limits too. So, after being treated that way, I decided to move on to a company where I wouldn't have to deal with someone like Stephen. He clearly didn't like my decision, and he was grinding his teeth in frustration. I'm no longer a member of your company. Therefore, I have no obligation to protect your company's interests. Thomas! He raised his voice, but I wasn't about to back down. Please leave, Stephen. He clenched his teeth and stared at me. But he must have realized I wouldn't budge. Looking bitter, he stood up and left the room. I returned to the room I had just come from. Waiting there was Mr. Nelson. He looked eager to hear what had happened. This was his office. The man I was talking to during Stephen's frantic call was him. So, how did it go? He seemed pretty humiliated. Mr. Nelson gave a satisfied smile. Seeing that made me feel at ease. Watching Stephen leave in defeat finally settled everything inside me. I never imagined someone as skilled as you would be forced to resign over something as petty as jealousy. You're too kind. Even back when we were in private contact, he had always spoken highly of my skills. I understood that, but hearing his praise still made me feel a little embarrassed. Still, was it really okay for me to step in on the negotiation like that? It had been Mr. Nelson's suggestion, but I couldn't help feeling a little guilty. He had made it clear that I could decline the offer. But I knew that without access to the AI chips, Axis Logic would be in trouble. Technically, I wasn't even an official employee yet. I had only left Alto Networks the day before. The reason I was at Axis Logic now was to complete the onboarding process. After resigning yesterday, I called Mr. Nelson and said I would accept the job offer. That's why I was at the company today for formal procedures. So technically, the negotiation had been handled by me before I was officially part of Axis Logic. That did make me feel a little uneasy, but Mr. Nelson wasn't concerned in the slightest. It's fine. Without you, the deal probably would have failed anyway. Stephen likely didn't have any proper materials prepared, did he? Well, I had already told him that I shredded the materials I originally prepared for the negotiation. Besides, seeing you here probably made Stephen reflect a little. That might be true. Mr. Nelson gave a quiet smile. His expression made me smile too. He was glad to have recruited me. But more than that, I could sense he truly believed Stephen's actions were inexcusable. Stephen probably doesn't understand how remarkable your sales work really is. That's flattering. Maybe a bit too much. Not at all. Your honesty and dedication are what have led you to so many successful deals. The fact that your former boss couldn't see that is the real problem. The reason my sales results had always been strong was it was the trust I built over time with other companies. In a negotiation, earning the trust of the other company is essential. It's a simple principle, but the bigger the deal, the more important that trust becomes. Big contracts move enormous sums of money, and there's no room for mistakes. Also, since contracts tend to span long periods, whether the other party can be trusted becomes a critical consideration. In that sense, my approach, prioritizing trust, had naturally drawn the attention of many decision-makers. I always made sure my proposals were based on a deep understanding of the client's needs. I listened, identified their challenges, and responded accordingly. That mindset was likely seen as ideal in a salesperson. Stephen tends to take a more aggressive approach. He rose through the ranks, focusing solely on numbers. But that approach has cost him trust, and now his results are slipping. Aggression has its place in sales. So I don't necessarily think his methods were wrong. But over time, those actions wore away the trust of our partners. That's why his performance declined. Salespeople are often judged by their numbers. That leads many to chase deal volume over integrity. Mr. Nelson spoke with quiet conviction. It's something I had felt firsthand. But you chose the long game, building relationships and letting the numbers follow. That's rare in companies where everything is tracked and measured. That's why so many firms admire you. Mr. Nelson. Hearing it directly made me feel awkward. I scratched my cheek, a little flustered. But at the same time, I felt reassured that my approach had never been wrong. Earning trust might seem like a long way around, but in truth, it's the fastest path to results. In fact, it had earned me the responsibility of handling the Axis Logic negotiation at Alto Networks. That's why I reached out to you, and why I want you to thrive here with us. I'll be counting on you. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. It made me genuinely happy to be so highly regarded by him. and I knew I had to live up to that trust. I felt a renewed sense of determination to contribute to this company's growth. And with that, the paperwork was completed, and I officially began working at Axis Logic. Meanwhile, back at Alto Networks, losing the $7.8 billion deal had thrown the company into chaos. Mr. Kennedy was furious and confronted Stephen. Thomas quit, and now the deal is lost? What is going on here, Stephen? Explain yourself. That's Bose. I had only resigned yesterday. Stephen had even instructed HR to keep it under wraps. So Mr. Kennedy didn't realize I had resigned until the meeting was already over. When it came time to leave for Axis Logic, I didn't show up. Instead, Stephen returned from the meeting with a gloomy face. That's when Mr. Kennedy demanded answers and learned the truth. We assigned this deal to Thomas. Why did you take over the negotiation without telling anyone? And why did he resign? Stephen was forced to explain everything from the beginning. That he believed he was better suited for the deal, so he took over. That he pressured Thomas into resigning. That all the documents were deleted and shredded. And that the meeting failed because somehow I was already with Axis Logic. Naturally, Mr. Kennedy exploded with rage. Unbelievable, every bit of this is outrageous. The board agreed Thomas would handle this. Who gave you the authority to override that? But I. No excuses. And so, the full responsibility for the company's biggest failed negotiation fell on Stephen. Given that he had deliberately forced me out, his dismissal was almost guaranteed. Of course, the matter didn't end there. One day, Mr. Kennedy came to Axis Logic, bringing Stephen with him. He said he wanted to offer an apology. Since Mr. Kennedy wasn't at fault, I agreed to meet with him. I'm terribly sorry we let things get so out of hand. You didn't deserve that. You have nothing to apologize for, Mr. Kennedy. But still, Mr. Kennedy turned to Stephen, who remained silent beside him, and scolded him. Apologize. I'm truly sorry. The arrogant Stephen who once drove me out was nowhere to be seen. Apparently, he had been thoroughly reprimanded by the board. After the apology, Mr. Kennedy hesitantly asked, "So, you really have no intention of returning to us?" "No, I've decided to stay here." "I see. Then I wish you all the best in your work here." He seemed disappointed. But perhaps he knew he no longer had the right to ask me to return. To my surprise, even Mr. Kennedy accepted my career move without much resistance. And then, Stephen suddenly raised his voice. "It's all your fault this happened. Stephen, if it weren't for you, none of this would have happened." His dismissal was all but guaranteed. He probably figured that since he was going to be let go anyway, he might as well say what he really thought. Is it fun looking down on someone who's hit rock bottom? Caught off guard by the sudden outburst, I frowned slightly. I understood the frustration and sense of inferiority Stephen was feeling, and I couldn't say I'd never face the same in the future. But still, there was something I had to make clear to him. You crossed the line. Sales is a world where results are laid bare. It's only natural to feel jealousy at times. I've experienced plenty of frustration myself when deals didn't go my way. But even so, there are things you can and cannot do. At the very least, you don't secretly change a lead negotiator or force a colleague to resign. Shut up, don't lecture me. Unwilling to listen, Stephen barked back in anger. But then, someone unexpected entered the meeting room. Seems a bit noisy in here. It was Mr. Nelson. Looking directly at Stephen, he said, "You're Stephen, correct? Do you understand what you've done?" He had told me he wanted to deal with this personally. Still, I was surprised to see him here because I hadn't expected it. He must have been quietly keeping an eye on the situation. He stole my success. If it weren't for him, I would have been in charge. Don't blame others. He was chosen because of everything he's built up over time. What? He clearly didn't expect even Mr. Nelson to scold him. Stunned, Stephen fell silent. Mr. Nelson continued. He's worked hard in a world driven by numbers while always prioritizing trust. That's why so many companies tried to recruit him. Of course, he was chosen for this deal. Mr. Nelson continued speaking to the speechless Stephen. Sales isn't just about forcing numbers through. Sure, you might get a contract once, but the business world is small. You're bound to cross paths again. If someone remembers being strong-armed into a deal, of course that'll hurt future negotiations. Faced with Mr. Nelson's calm but firm explanation, Stephen couldn't say a word in response. Maybe some part of him knew it was all true. Blaming your own failures on him is unacceptable. You need to face your mistakes like an adult. Damn it. Whether from guilt or defeat, Stephen collapsed into his seat. For a while, he just sat there, completely drained. Eventually, as if accepting that he couldn't recover from this, he quietly bowed and left. Stephen was officially dismissed for misconduct. Even with his former title as department head, it would be nearly impossible for a man in his 50s to find another job. But that's something he brought upon himself. He crossed a line that should never be crossed. With Stephen, who had long bullied others, finally gone, the employees at Alto Networks reportedly felt relieved. I was originally meant to be promoted to department head, but since I had left the company, a different, trusted colleague took the position. With new leadership, the sales department began its fresh start and aimed for further growth. As for Stephen, rumor has it he's now working night shifts on a construction crew. It was a far cry from his former role as department head. Perhaps that job will be the start of a new path for him. In the end, Alto Networks and Axis Logic signed the $7.8 billion deal. Despite everything, Axis Logic still wanted those AI chips. And Alto Networks still sought that historic contract. Their interests aligned, and if not for Stephen's sabotage, the deal likely would have gone smoothly from the start. I became the representative on the Axis Logic side. The new negotiator from Alto Networks was a familiar face from the sales team. Thanks to our mutual trust, the talks progressed without issue. After the deal was finalized, I heard Mr. Kennedy finally breathed a sigh of relief. During a break, Mr. Nelson said to me, "Quite the accomplishment for someone who just joined the company. I only had ties to my former workplace, that's all." "Don't be so modest. You handled things diplomatically and kept a good relationship with your old company. That's thanks to your skill and character. I'm really glad we recruited you. I had no intention of returning to Alto Networks. Still, I'm sure I'll cross paths with them in future negotiations. As long as I keep prioritizing trust, I'm confident things will go well. Today proved that everything I've built up through honesty and consistency wasn't in vain. And that's why I'll continue to value human connection and trust above all else."